Hey, welcome to Her Authentic Journey, the podcast. I am your host, Navasia Collier, woman, soon to be wife, mother of three, and the former strong, independent woman. Along my journey, I discovered the secret key to the more in life is in your authenticity. This podcast is about becoming unstuck in who you thought you had to be as a strong, independent, maybe the responsible one, and become who we were meant to be. Myself and other resilient guests will share what we only wish someone shared with us early on. Topics, tips, lessons learned and unlearned while on our personal journeys of becoming true to who we are, not who we've had to be. Now, this purposeful, resilient life that you and I are meant for not only requires authenticity, it is also intentionality. Steering you away from just pushing and getting through life, we believe in the Method on Purpose roadmap of mindset, environment, time, honesty, obstacles, and the doing all work together to begin designing a life that is and feels more purposefully fulfilled, a life you actually love. So tune in, come along, join our Facebook community, and begin your authentic journey today. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Her Authentic Journey, the podcast. I am your host, Navasia Collier, and today we have a guest. I am pleased to introduce Tamika McTier. Tamika McTier is a certified marriage coach, wife of 16 years, author, and mom of two. Tamika uses her signature talk method and experience to empower other women to have happy marriages of their own. She writes about relationships, offers coaching on communication, and hosts the Ageless Conversations podcast. Tamika's mission is to help wives thrive in their marriage while writing their own stories, creating their own paths, and becoming unstoppable in the pursuit of their God-given dreams. Now, I have had the pleasure of meeting Tamika in a business coaching program about a year ago. And I've also had the opportunity to dive into her recent book, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear more about her. So, Tamika, welcome to the podcast.
Navasia, thank you so much for having me as a guest here on your podcast today. I'm so excited for this conversation.
So am I. So this podcast is basically about the journeys of resilient women who have made a decision to become true to who they are, not who they've had to be. So we're reminding and sharing with others that designing a life that is authentically fulfilled for you is a choice that we can make.
Most
so
definitely.
like I said, I dived into your book, and your story is a story of resilience. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, and I want to say to you, Navasia, before I dive into my story, thank you so much for your support of the book and just being able to read my story and see the resilience that's there. That's definitely what I want people to be able to take away from it, that I'm not a perfect person, and most of us are not perfect people out here in this world. And so no matter what life comes and throws at us, that we have the opportunity to change the narrative. We are the narrators of our story, and we have the full opportunity to change the narrative. And so for me, my journey started out as a teen mom. At the tender age of 19, I became a mom. And so one would think, or sometimes life happens and people feel like, oh, now I'm a statistic. For me, I did see myself as a statistic, because the truth behind the matter is I became a teenage mom. But I knew that didn't have to define me. It was just a chapter in my story. It was just the beginning seed for, I believe, what God was creating me and calling me to do here in this life. It was a great opportunity for me to, I would say, first of all, get back to my faith with Him. I remember as a little girl growing up, going to church is something that my family and I always did. However, when my grandmother passed away when I was a ninth grader in high school, I can't even recall a time that my family and I had gone to church after that. I knew about church, I knew about God, but I wouldn't say that I knew Him for myself. And so not long after I became a teen mom, I was doing well in that space, and I felt like there was still something that was missing, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I knew it wasn't people that I wanted to have around me. I knew what I was missing, and the emptiness that I had wasn't something that I felt like an individual could give to me. So it's not like I was looking for validation from a man. I wasn't looking for additional love from my dad. I wasn't looking for my mother to validate me or anything like that. There was something internally that I felt that I needed more of to continue to grow as Tamika, the individual, and to show up more for myself and for my daughter, and to really thrive in that space as a single mom. And so just through this burning desire that I had, still not knowing what it was through a small conversation that I had with a coworker, and she was telling me how she had gone to a funeral and the eulogy was really good, and she was going to be going back to this church on this particular Sunday to visit because she thought it was so good. Now, me, in my mind, I was thinking funerals are supposed to be sad, but she's describing this. She's not talking about the funeral. She's talking about the message and how the pastor pulled her in, based on what he's talking about. And for some reason, I just kept listening to that. Well, I realized after she had gone to church that following Sunday, she came back to work again talking about this experience and how the church was really good. And so again, there was something burning in me, and I had no idea what it was, but I know I needed some of it. And the church that she was talking about was only about 20 minutes from my home, but it was 45 minutes from her house. Again, my wheels started to spin, and I wondered, what's going on in that church, or what is this pastor exactly talking about that she's willing to drive 45 minutes from her home? Maybe I should meet her there. It's only 20 minutes from mine. What do I have to lose? And so I just asked her, simple question, are you going this coming Sunday? So she said, yeah. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to meet you there. And so that decision, I felt like was one of the best decisions I could have made in my life. I did meet her there that following Sunday, and I went that following Sunday, and I went the Sunday after that. And it was one particular Sunday that I went. I felt like God was really calling me. The Holy Spirit was all over me, and it was like it was almost like He was tapping me on my shoulder and saying, like, now, go, it's your time. And that was the day that I rededicated my life to Christ. And I have to say that when they say when you are in Christ, you are a new creation, that's truly how I felt. And my life has never been the same. It was just that one thing that I needed to really put the icing on the cake, if you say, that really made me know that I could thrive at this thing called single life and being a single mom.
Mm-hmm. Wow. There's so much in that. When I read it in the book, I resonated with so much of your story. I was too a teen mom. I had my daughter at 18. And the first thing that resonated with me was you being open about the decision that you made, maybe internally, that you were not going to be another statistic. Mm-hmm. That was the immediate agreement I made to myself when I found out I was pregnant, because around that time, there was so many teen pregnancies happening. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was actually a senior in high school. And around me, everyone's pregnant. And even in high school, they tried to remove me from my classes and put me into a separate building. And I refused. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I talk about that drive of, I'm not going to be a statistic. I mm-hmm. am going to have my child, and I am going to raise my child. I'm not going to leave my child with the grandparent. Mm-hmm. Because, it's why that stuck out to me was because of our stories resonating, and also because our environment impacts those decisions, right?
Yeah. When you talked about how, pregnancy was all around you, that's one of the things I point out in the book, is how everywhere I looked, it was just around me. It was nothing that was new to me to, hear or see about teen pregnancy. In the 90s, that was just a thing. And not only that, my mom was a teen mom. My sister was a teen mom. Of course, me being the youngest one, my mom, it's just the two of us, my sister and I. And then, again, my mom, of course, in the back of my mind, I would be the one to change the trajectory of my family for everything. I was like, I'm going to be the one who go to college. I'm not going to have any kids. I'm going to be the first one to get married. And, you tell yourself all of these stories. And so when I found myself following a similar path, internally, I kind of beat myself up in a way. But on the other side of it, I was like, okay, I'm going to own this thing. okay, this is what happened, but this won't become a repeated cycle for me. It'll be something that said, yeah, that happened, but you won't find Tamika McTier, or Tamika, what my maiden name was at that time, and her having all these kids, or me begging anybody for anything. Any and everything that I want for my child and I will work hard and make whatever sacrifice I need to make sure it's done, because I was like, I'm not going to allow myself to ever have that repeated to me, like, well, I did this for you. No, I did it for myself with the help of God.
Yes, yes. That is so good. You mentioned, so your first child was a daughter, right?
Yes.
So that was another other thing that resonated with me. And you did mention as well, because I tell my daughter to this day, she's 20 right now, and she's in college actually. And I tell her, like, you really gave me a reason. Like, she really changed my life. And I seen that as your story was going. I'm like, oh my gosh, I resonated.
You see how I said that too? Yeah.
Yes,
like,
really
she became my why. She became
Yes.
my why. And you often hear people say in life, when you know your why and the reason why it is that you're doing what you're doing, you become unstoppable in the pursuit of doing that thing. And I always knew what my why was. It was always front and center. I have somebody watching me. I have an example that I need to be. I'm raising a daughter. I get to show her what it looks like to not be perfect and still get any and everything that you want out of life when you work hard for it, when you change your mind, when you trust in yourself. And have faith. You can have everything that you want. Your journey may look different for somebody else's, but that end result can still be the same as somebody else's. The path is just going to be different. You may have a couple of bumps and roads in yours. Theirs might have been a straight path. It doesn't matter. If you want it, you can get it.
Right. Now we're all, we're all different. We're all created differently. So although I think I hit, when I say that actively began on my journey, was not too long ago, actually.
That's
when
fine.
I had my child, when I had my daughter, I dived into, like, my children were my whole world. Like you said, it's another reason to get up every day to do what you need to do. So it wasn't until maybe about 2.5 years ago that I realized I had that emptiness that you were talking about, like, of something was missing. Not everybody's journey is alike, but like I said, it's about that decision. It's about making that choice and knowing that you can, like you said, change the narrative on your life. As a mom, and knowing that how it is to pour into your children, and your children can be your whole world. I was very pleased to read on and see how you mentioned that you and your daughter's father had separated at some point, but even though you put your all into your children, you were able to find the love of your life. And and kind of build that. So that was very inspiring. I'm engaged to be married. I'm not married yet. So, but
congratulations.
Thank you. But I think that's very powerful, because that's a transition in itself.
Yeah,
it's a transition in itself. So can you speak anything to that transition?
Sure, most definitely. And one of the things I would say before going into my transition, and I think I probably shared this in my story about, like, sure, I dated and things like that before God connected me with my husband, but I was very, how do I want to say, I definitely had my qualifiers as to who I would date and things like that. So sure, I had gone on several dates with different individuals, but nothing meaningful ever became of those. I don't even want to call them relationships, just, people that I would be talking to. Nothing meaningful ever became of those relationships. But when I met my husband, it was just something totally different. Truly what, I don't know, I consider it to be a divine moment. Obviously, you read the book, so you know how he and I met. But one of the things I remember I specifically talked about, and I shared it there, is that, I asked him if he had ever dated anybody with a child, and his answer was no. And so for me, I was never going to be the mom that wanted love or to be in a relationship so bad that I would sacrifice the relationship that I had with my daughter. To be honest, I had told myself all along, by a certain age, if I hadn't found a guy for me, that I was going to enter her teenage years and not even date, and then focus on a love life for myself after she was 18. So again, being in a relationship wasn't a priority for me, but I made sure that if I was going to be with somebody, they were going to accept all of me, and all of me definitely came with accepting my daughter. And so again, I had asked him if he had ever dated anybody with a child, and he was like, no. So I'm like, well, I have a child. He's like, okay. And then I remember us continuing to talk after that, and I was like, I got a kid, right? And then he was like, I heard you the first time you said it. And I'm like, oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure you heard that. So, fast forward into our marriage. Overall, I would say the transition was pretty good as it relates to that. Never any hiccups. And my daughter's father is still active in her life. He's always been present in her life. So as far as like co-parenting and things like that, we've always had a phenomenal relationship there. No, never any issues, never a disagreement or anything. But as it relates to me and coming into the marriage and how I was so focused in my independency and
Right.
just, doing me and my daughter, it definitely created unexpected challenges early on in my marriage. Because you're used to being, the strong one that can, for me, I say, I had grown accustomed to being the strong one that could do things without a man. And that worked until I met my husband. For me, what I didn't know is when I became Mrs. McTier was that Miss Independent had to go.
Yes. Yes, I am so glad that you said that. We don't really hear that too much. We don't really, you see, the strong, independent woman and, okay, she's married now, but to be honest about the fact that it's a transition, you have a new mindset you have to have when you're used to being and wearing many hats. And, love happens when love happens. It's not always planned. So sometimes when you feel like you got it all and you're in the groove and it's like, oh, love is coming. Like you got to really change up and transition and change, like I said, change your mindset and all of that. And it's
you have to change your mindset and everything that you do. And when I look at marriage and when I think about communication is so powerful and needed in marriage. And when you shut down and don't use it, it's going to have a huge impact on the trajectory of your marriage in a good way or a bad way. But it's going to have a big telltale and where that goes. And so just a little bit about me and how that whole thing played out. I come from an environment where my parents were together for a really long time, never married, but I also saw my mom experience abuse at the hands of my father. And so as a young girl, I never understood, like, why would you be in a relationship with that? And so to further that, I also had these stories in my head of, regardless of what man I'm with, if he ever tried it, even when my husband never tried any of those behaviors that my father displayed, it was just, I had all these stories made up in my head. I had a tough exterior. And so you wouldn't know by looking at me, but the woman I am today and the woman I used to be are not the same, as I have completely, Navasia, evolved as a wife. Ooh. I wish I could tell you I just prayed and things changed, but that's not my reality, because I was playing another one of my silent treatment games. And you may know about that, because whether, I would say it like this, whether you're married or not, women, we play that silent treatment game.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. We will play that silent treatment game. And so I remember being in my closet after we had just had a disagreement, and I can't even remember to tell you about what, but I will always remember how I felt. If I wasn't going to be heard, then I wasn't going to speak. And so suffering in silence anywhere from 24 to 72 hours, that's up to 3 days that I would play games of just walking back and forth and not saying anything, because of course I'm right and what's going on, or how do I bounce back from this conversation without it being an argument? How do you really say what's on your heart and mind without it being an argument, And so I remember being in my closet after one of our disagreements thinking, I want to talk to my husband, but I really don't know what to say. Was I supposed to say I'm sorry? Was I going to wait on him to say I'm sorry? I felt trapped, wondering if I would ever get to a place where I could ever say what's on my heart without the fear of rejection or abandonment. I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew that wasn't the way I wanted to spend the rest of my marriage. Games, as I could think about them, were always fun. Games create laughter, right?
Right.
The silent treatment, it wasn't doing none of that, girl. I was sad in the inside and wondering what the heck, filled with all the emotion. And I remember saying, God, I'm ready to surrender. I no longer want to lean on my own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm tired of playing that game. I'm ready to do the work to find out why I'm struggling so much to communicate and be vulnerable with my husband. And I remember God clearly telling me, Holy Spirit loud and clear, and saying, Tamika, you need to do the one thing that you haven't been doing. It's time to talk.
Mm. That is so good. That is so
and
good.
and so from that I was able to create my own personal development. That I created this talk method that taught me how to T, transform my mind, A, assess the foundation, L is learn new techniques, and K is kickstart conversations that I was once afraid to have. You see, because I had saw not only in my household but for so many women around me be taken advantage of their men, the guys that they said that they love, men who they trusted, take advantage of them. I felt like if I just let my guard down and let my husband in at all, as much as in love as I know that I was with him, and definitely wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, when it came to communication and the way I was truly feeling and things that made me afraid, or if I disliked something that was going on, if I verbalized myself and it turned into a disagreement for us, I felt, what's the next best thing? Maybe I should just shut down and talk about it, because one, I don't want to live in a household where we are arguing all the time, and two, it's just exhausting. Then you have my husband, who his household, his parents have been married a very long time. They actually just celebrated 51 years of marriage, but he never even witnessed them having a disagreement. So can you imagine? He shuts down because it's foreign to him. Like, what the heck are we disagreeing about? And I'm shutting down because I'm like, I don't want to be in a house where we're arguing all the time. So can you imagine what that is and how that's like?
I absolutely can.
But it put us in a place, and I'm so glad I had the encounter. Even with that, I don't even look at that experience and that season that we were in, when I couldn't communicate with my husband in a way where I felt truly connected to him. I'm grateful for the experience, because like, it made me do a self-evaluation of myself. What people don't realize, and or at least how I like to always say, is being married is personal development work on a whole another level. It's that assignment, it's that title that comes with an opportunity for you to definitely look in the mirror every day. And that's not looking in the mirror to check your hair and make sure, your hair is in the right place, or that you need some lipstick on, or that your eyelashes are together. It's that reflection to really say, like, who am I showing up as in the marriage? What role am I playing? What can I do? How could I have de-escalated that? What could I have done different? How was my tone? Mm-hmm. Should I have said, I'm sorry? Mm-hmm. Do I have expectations that's unrealistic? Am I expecting him to show up in a way that I'm not even showing up as? Mm-hmm. I like to look at marriage as a way of, I call it dying to self daily. And no, I'm not saying you're physically dying and leaving here. I'm saying it's not about you.
Right.
But you do reap the rewards. Mm-hmm. You do reap
growing,
the rewards. Right? It is.
And that's why growing and evolving.
And that's why I said it's the biggest piece of personal development that you'll ever get, that probably you don't put any expense behind, but it's more of a reflection, a look in the mirror at self on a daily basis.
Yes. That is so good. That is so good. As that, strong, independent woman myself, who, former, I am recovering.
Yeah.
I am on the journey, and, being engaged with 3 children, I don't think it's by accident that the journey had arrived when it did, because now I see marriage differently. I'm seeing love differently, because the journey, it has its good moments and it has its bad moments. And like you said, it's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of how am I showing up, a lot of being okay with who you are and what you really want. Yeah. And just, I don't think it's by mistake that this happened at a time that I am finally with someone that allows that. When I say allow, I don't mean permission, but what I mean is
you can truly show up as your authentic self.
I can be my authentic self.
The vulnerability can be there. Like, you can say, like,
willing to travel this journey with me not knowing, because none of us know what's on the other side until we don't know. It's the everyday thing.
Yeah.
So so what you said was, it was good. It was really good. So if you were to look back at your younger self, what advice would you give her?
If I could look back at my younger self, I think one of the main things I would tell her is um, remember that faith that you were introduced to as a little girl. You're gonna need it. Don't forget about it and visit it as often as you need to.
That's good. That's good. What would you tell a woman who is at a state where she is empty and not knowing what her next step is? Still trying to figure out who she is because she seems to be swallowed in by what life has brought to her.
Yeah.
What would you tell her?
Yeah. So advice I would tell her who to a woman who's feeling empty in her position or where she is right now in life is I would say get real and honest with yourself about it's going to take the deep work. So maybe ask yourself some of these questions. One, what is it that I really want out of life? Two, what kind of work am I putting in to manifest this life that I say that I want? It's one thing to say that you want something to happen. It's something altogether different when you put the action in place to be diligent about making that thing happen. Am I looking for fulfillment from somebody else, or am I looking to be fulfilled by myself first? Am I giving myself love, or am I sabotaging myself with the words that I say to myself? Validate yourself before you look for validation from somebody else. Check your mindset. How is that? Is it healthy? Do you need to seek additional outside help? If so, take that next best step. Whether that's getting therapy, whether that's getting a coach, whatever it is that you need, take that next best step for you. Something else I would also say pay attention to is understand your capacity. Are you feeling empty because you have overexerted yourself and your cup is completely empty and it needs to be refilled? Again, go back to the things that make you happy and you find joy in. We all know that we can't pour from an empty cup. So make sure that when you are given, not only is your cup full, but you're probably pulling from the saucer because it's so full. And the last thing I probably would say is, do you have community? Do you have anybody around you that's supporting you, that's holding you accountable in those times when you feel defeated? Do you have anybody that you trust in your circle that you could go to and just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, or what would you do in this situation? Whether it's somebody to bounce ideas off of, whether it's somebody that you can just go to and pray. Do you have a community or one trusted source at minimum that you could go to for this?
That is so good. That is so good, especially the last part about community. I say that because a lot of women, usually the quieter, quieter, reserved, strong women, we are the community, right? We seem to work within ourselves and in our small circles. And coming to the realization that it does take more than you for you to be able to activate and operate as your true self and bring what you're supposed to bring to the world into your relationships. It has to be more than just your hands. You can only do but so much. It's like you've already done enough. So so that you mentioned community, that was really, really good. I think that could be a hard topic and a hard transition for that woman.
What's so interesting for me personally is I felt like I had so much community when I was single, but then when I got married, while I was connected to a lot of married couples in the church, not any friends or anything like that, because when we got married, we didn't have any friends that had gotten married until probably we had like year 5. So we didn't have any like close friends, but I had people that obviously I had known in church and covenant couples and things like that we were connected to. But even still in that, in the church setting and being surrounded by so many married couples, I didn't feel like the community aspect of it. One is because I didn't feel like anybody was sharing their marriage from a point of view that sound real, if that makes sense. I felt like, yeah, we were around married couples in church, several of them, but they only talked about things from a surface level, or they only talked about scripture. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me in particular, I was looking for people to really share real life stories about, hey, we had an argument and I didn't feel like talking to him. I wanted people to share stuff like that. I wanted people to share real life transformational stories, real stories that happen in day-to-day marriages. And for whatever reason, nobody was talking about that.
Right.
But everybody is like, oh, we pray together. Oh, we worship together, which I think are all phenomenal things. My husband and I were doing that. But what about the real stuff? The real stuff that keeps the marriage going?
Right. And it leaves you, when you're in the middle of it, what do I do with this? Right.
Yeah.
What do I do? How do I handle it?
And so I say that I didn't have community because I never felt close enough to share my real self with any of those people, because I didn't feel like they were showing up as their real self. So I felt like if I went to them, that I would be seen as the outcast, like, oh my gosh, she is not showing up as this type of wife, or this is going on in the marriage. So I didn't like that. And so that's one of the huge reasons why behind I like to do the work that I'm doing, because I want to be that real person that somebody can connect with, that they can touch, and that they can know, like, as long as you do the work, and the work is going to look different for every marriage. I don't like to call it hard work. I like to call it intentional work. Because, like, if you want to be married, I like to say it like this. Ask yourself, is it just that you are caught up in the title and so you want to be married? Are you interested in being married? Or are you committed and intentional about being married? If you're committed and intentional about being married, then you're always going to show up for that assignment. You're always going to show up, and do whatever is required to keep you guys in a place of thriving. If you're interested in it, then you might be approaching your marriage from that standpoint of, like, we had a disagreement, so I'm not sleeping in the bed tonight, or I'm sleeping on the couch tonight, or I'm not sleeping there tonight, or I'm always getting a book to look at the next, apartment guide or something like that, or have this secret bag or this secret stash. I believe mindsets like that can create something maybe that you don't want to become your reality. I think subconsciously you could be creating a story, and you eventually may end up in a place where it's like, oh, I'm looking for an apartment today because we're going to separate, or X, Y, and Z is happening because you silently, subconsciously talk that thing into existence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, mindset is very important. Very important.
Yeah, like, don't be the person who has 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Don't be the person that's always approaching it. As soon as everything happens, like, well, I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. Why? Right. Why is the first response to run?
Right. That's the time to be honest with yourself and ask yourself those questions. Why am I here in the first place? What do I want from it? Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so good. That's so good.
Even with helping, even supporting marriages, I love doing it from both ways. I love supporting just wives, but even more so if both parties are willing to do the work. I love supporting even the couples, and being able to spend one-on-one time with the husband, being able to spend one-on-one time with the wife, and then bringing them together. Because even in that, you can see where there's been some breakdowns in the communication. Even when I'm hearing the stories, it's like they may say the same thing, but the way they're saying it, I can instantly pick up on, oh, I can see why this person perceived it like that. And then bringing those couples back together for them to be able to share it again, and then really be able to help them bring it all together and say, like, this is what was being said. It's just, man, I love seeing the light bulb go off and seeing people that are committed to doing the work and getting assistance to really get to that place where they're thriving. Like, it's just, they're on the same wavelength, and the vulnerability is just there. I think that's something that, like, you can never get away from that. Regardless of how you're feeling, you should be able to go to your spouse and tell your spouse about whatever it is you're feeling. Like, right. Nothing should be off limits when it comes to the marriage. It's just not the communication. It's communication about, sex and what it is that you want and what's your frequency. Don't assume that your spouse knows that maybe you want to have sex 5 times a week and they're okay with 1. If that's not pleasing for you, then you should be able to speak up and say to your spouse, like, I would be okay if you can't meet me at 5 days, but 3 days is where I think that we could meet, and you guys coming into agreement with that. If there's something that's off balance with your money, you should be able to say like, hey, we have set this goal to reach this, whatever the financial goal is, and we're off track because this is what we should have been saving each month. However, we're here. Or whatever it is, there's just not a scenario, I say, that you shouldn't be able to speak to your spouse about. If it is, I think that you should be transparent enough with yourself to ask those questions again. Why? Why am I so afraid to do this? Or why am I afraid? Just ask yourself the why.
Mm-hmm. As a marriage coach, when would you say that a couple should either seek coaching, or do you think it should be ongoing?
So I'm not necessarily going to say it's an ongoing thing. I think it's something that you could receive and then you could stop. And I guess I would look at the same way people often look at therapy. It depends on what is your reason for going. Now, if you have not grown or you need continual work, then go. But once you have the tools, the day may change, the year may change, but what you encounter is 9 times out of 10 not a new experience. The way in which you respond to that may be different. Think about it like this. If you and your spouse or you and your boyfriend had a disagreement today about how the child was being disciplined, and you came to an agreement about how that child should be disciplined, in 6 months when the child was not disciplined in the way in which you felt like he or she should have been, what are you going to do? You might have that same response and get upset. And what did you do to get over it, to make sure that those next 6 months or before that incident happened, what were you doing so that didn't happen? You see what I'm saying? A lot of what we encounter in life is not new. The date might be new. Mm-hmm. One small piece of the experience might be new, but it's not new. The way in which you respond is what's going to change the outcome on that. So if you are doing something and you're communicating with your spouse and you know that you intentionally went below the belt, meaning you said something that was going to pierce your spouse's heart and make them feel a certain kind of way, and you tried to belittle them and you just went on about it, really? So you're not going to say, I'm sorry?
Right.
So have you grown to a place where you're still playing below the belt, or have you grown to a place where now, even if you go below the belt, you're mature enough to say, I'm sorry? That's the difference. So if you still are staying below the belt, you are above saying I'm sorry, then you're probably going to need to stay in somebody's coaching or counseling program because you have not matured. You haven't grown past that thing. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about conversations from a disagreement that we had 2 days ago? Or are you continually going in the archive talking about something from 5 years ago? You still need healing there. That thing is still bothering you for some reason. There's more to it, and there's more that needs to be unpacked.
Mm-hmm. That was for somebody, several people. That was, I hear it. Yes, I hear it. So obviously, Tamika McTier is the one you need to contact for communication and marriage coaching. Okay, she just got us all together today. So Tamika, let us know where we can find you.
So yeah, you can find me and connect with me if you need coaching services or anything like that. Or if you want to purchase the book yourself, you can find that information out at my website at www.tamikamctier.com. That's TAMIKA McTier, MCTIER.com. There you will be able to find out about my coaching services. There's also a tab there where you can purchase a physical copy of the book if you'd like to as well. Also, if you want to send me a quick DM about something, you have a question, or you want to jump on a quick call, just feel free, if you can't find the information through my website, to just shoot me a DM if you reach out on Facebook at Tamika McTier or on Instagram at _TamikaMcTier.com and say talk, and then I'll know what you're reaching out for. You can also find me. I'm the host of the Ageless Conversations podcast, and a new episode is released there every single Thursday, so you can find me on all major podcasting platforms.
Thank you for listening to Her Authentic Journey, the podcast. I hope you enjoyed and were able to grab something meaningful from this episode. If so, please support by sharing with a friend, rate and review. You can also refer to our show notes for more. Until next time, remember, Be true to who you are, not who you've had to be.